Welcome to France, the country with almost as many bakeries as it has people. And they need every one of those bakeries to keep their bread-obsessed population fed. French bakeries churn out 10 billion baguettes a year, which means on average, each French man, woman, and child is eating a baguette every 2 days. France has even been dubbed the capital of bread, making it the perfect final piece of our 3-part series about baking. We've gone from remote convents in Spain, to underground communal ovens in Morocco, and now to the French Riviera to see the mountains of baguettes for ourselves. Join us as we explore the baguette, learn all of the ways to eat one the proper French way, and finally take the bold step of cooking our own baguette with 3 different methods and no previous experience. Like, subscribe, and sit back to enjoy this globe-trotting foodie adventure. Et voilà! Bienvenue en France. What actually makes bread a baguette? Everyone has seen one, but in France, it is actually defined by the law.
We got 1, 2.
We got 2. We did.
Apparently, it all started after the French Revolution, which was motivated by a desire for equality and dignity for the lower classes. There used to be 2 different kinds of bread sold at a French bakery. One for the poor, made with low-quality bran flour, and one for the rich, made with a more refined flour. But in the post-revolution 1700s, bakers were held under penalty of imprisonment to make one kind of bread, the bread of equality. Then in the 1920s, a law was created that no one should have to work before 4 a.m. Bakers who were used to rising even earlier had to create a new shape of bread that could bake evenly and in time for the inevitable breakfast bread rush. Thus came the long and cylindrical baguette. But the final law that made the baguette what it is today didn't come until the 1990s, when the French defined any bakery selling a baguette de tradition as having 3 consistent components. 1. It is made of just 4 ingredients: good quality water, salt, a rising agent, and a wheat flour containing less than 2.8% of beans, soy, or malted wheat flours and 0 preservatives. Number 2. It is made on the premises. And number 3, it measures roughly 65 centimeters long and 5 to 6 centimeters wide. Now that we have the baseline definitions of the baguette, let's go taste some. This was hardly our first outing to a bakery since arriving in France, but it was our first to a highly reviewed boulangerie. We asked them for one of each kind of baguette they had. Then, as the French do, tucked them under our arms for the walk home. We went to a bakery that was extremely highly rated. It was like the only one that we could find that was 5 stars across the board. And some of the ones that you could find that were 5 stars had 1 or 2 reviews, but this one had about 80.
I think it's a 94.
Tons of bakeries in France are very poorly rated, actually. I guess there's just a high bar for the French. So here we have 3 different baguettes from the exact same bakery, but they're all different. I don't know which one's which.
Let's try it.
Let's try it. This is the pain ordinaire. So this is like the typical baguette. It can have some additives in it. It can use whiter bread. And technically, I think places can sell these without having to make them on site because it's not considered the artisanal bread. This is the kind that you can't find in a grocery store because it has to, according to French decree, be made on site with 4 ingredients. It's very specific. This is the pain de tradition.
I think this one looks the best, so I'm interested to see if that's the case.
And then this is a pain céréal, she said, which is kind of more like the country loaf, made with whole grain.
It's got
a little more
like seeds
rustic.
in it. It looks like almost.
try.
Can we try tradition first?
Yeah, you want to? This
All right.
is, yeah.
We're going with the tear-off method, which is what we've learned
Hey.
is supposedly
Thank you,
the
Daddy.
tradition. Here you go, Ozzy.
Ooh, look at the, all right.
Everybody
You
ready?
ready?
Yes.
Here we go.
Cheers. Chin chin.
Chin, chin. That's a nice baguette.
That's my favorite one we've had so far in France. I really like a crunchy baguette.
They were going like hotcakes though. There was a line out the door and they were just whipping them out. Everybody was walking out with them underneath their,
I know.
their arms. We were like, let's
guess.
try this one. Everybody take a pause. Let's try
All right.
This is the ordinaire.
Everybody?
Let's
Ready?
try 'em.
Yeah, so similar crunch, but the inside is completely
Completely
different.
different.
The aeration in the tradition and kind of like the stickiness of the inside is very prevalent versus this is like much less sticky, more like kind of homogeneous feeling. So far,
Yeah,
better.
that tastes, I agree. This almost, and maybe it's just in my head, this almost tastes more artificial to me.
I don't know why you would buy that one instead of that one.
Can we try this one?
Has everyone kind of cleared their palates?
Yeah.
All right, ready?
Let's do it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of seeds in here.
Mm-hmm. like that a lot.
Very different than the other two just because it has the seeds.
My favorite is this one. I'll do this one, and this one, and this one.
You like them all.
I want to.
Surprise.
Now we had tasted baguettes, even 3 different kinds, but we wanted to know how most people like to eat their baguettes, so we took to the waterfront of Nice to see if we could get any answers. Our girls stood there confidently with their sign asking, "What's the best way to eat a baguette?"
Can you ask?
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, or whoever. What's the best way to eat a baguette? How do you like to eat your baguette?
Usually with some good cheese
Good cheese, okay.
and avocado.
You like avocado? Yes.
They had many smilers and a few takers for their question.
Baguette de pain, je sais, avec du beurre
Oh,
et trempé dans le chocolat chaud.
Do you have a favorite way? So with butter. Just tear it off. Okay, that's what we've heard too.
What we gleaned from talking to different people and through our own research is that there's no bad time to eat a baguette. And that's why bakeries are cooking throughout the day to make sure that they always have fresh, crusty loaves for people to pick up for any meal. We decided to take a stab at each mealtime: breakfast, lunch, snack time, and dinner. First, we went to the Nice Flower Market, which also sells some food products, to pick up some provisions for breakfast the next day. The flower market is lively, even in the winter. The fruits of Côte d'Azur's famous year-round sunshine. In Menton, a city very close to Nice, on the same day was having their annual lemon festival, but we decided to forego it because we were out late the night before at the Carnival parade in Nice. However, we decided to celebrate the Menton lemons by picking up a little jar of lemon jam to eat with our breakfast the next day. To be properly French, we didn't get our baguette until the following morning.
I love your camera.
You guys wanna go get some baguettes for breakfast?
Why? That's nice. My daddy always makes pancakes.
We have to go get some bread because we're gonna do jam and bread. We usually eat breakfast right when we wake up, so this was an unusual departure for us all by striking out to get our freshly baked baguette. 1 baguette or 2? That was the question.
We got 2. Pretty good. He said this is like a seeded one that he said is really good. It's got pumpkin seeds, and sesame seeds, green crackle, and then a good old date juice. Yeah. Look at how much flour's on the outside.
This is something we never knew before. I've seen this on many toasters, and apparently these little bars that go up are for a baguette. Turn on the toaster and it warms your baguette. Never knew it. Everyone we'd spoken to said that a baguette, butter, and jam was the French breakfast of champions. So, armed with those 3 things exactly, we indulged. I'm just gonna tear it off for you guys. Apparently that's the French way, and I also don't have a bread knife. So.
Put some butter on it.
Lemony.
Ooh, that is super lemony.
Can I smell it?
It's 39% lemon.
Super lemon.
It's basically like the jam version of lemonade, because
It is.
lemonade is basically just lemon juice
Sugar.
and
Yes.
sugar. Oh yeah, that's crusty. I'm gonna just do some jam on yours, but you can spread it, okay? Okay. Ready, girlies?
Eugene. Here we go.
It's truly like lemonade jam. Really good. Very bright.
Really helps having a fresh baguette.
That place was really close to our apartment, and this is our last day in France. Mild regrets. We weren't crazy enough to commit to eating baguettes for every meal of one single day, so each of our baguette experiences took place on different days. For lunch, we wanted to revisit a French staple that we had tried 6 months earlier on our last trip to France. The Jambon Beurre sandwich, which at its most classic is just a baguette, butter, and ham, but we decided to put our own little spin on it. For this meal, we found ourselves in Cannes, just southwest of Nice. The place across the street was actually closed. So much is closed in France on Sunday and Monday, so we went down the block. Once we returned, we set our little girls up to see if they could handle the task of assembling the sandwiches themselves. One jambon beurre, one pomme bagnat, and one goat cheese and tomato sandwich, all supposedly French classics.
You're the sous-chef line, and I'm the real chef. You're gonna help me out. You're the sous-chef.
All right, which one do you want to make first? Do you want to make the tuna one, the tomato one, or the ham one?
Ham.
Ham? Okay. So I'm gonna bring you out your ingredients, okay? Read it again.
Bread, butter, ham, cheese, pickles, arugula.
Okay.
That's my cheese, and that's my ham, and that's my pickles.
That's right, and this is the arugula. If it's too much, don't use it all, and then go down your recipe. Listen, we're gonna leave. This is up to you, okay?
We gave them the ingredients one sandwich at a time and left the room to see if they could manage it together. Our eldest was pretty meticulous.
Bossy, this is kind of a hard part. We're trying to smash it. Hey, it's hard to spread the spider down. Hey, baby, no pickles. Oh, hey, no, we can't do it in a garden. Hey, sous-chef, you have to be a good degrader sous-chef ever, okay? Okay, baby, I think that's enough. Okay, mop that off the list. Cheese is after him.
But our little one, we realized upon watching the replay, decided to take the opportunity to sneak a mid-morning snack throughout the assembly process.
What do you mean? Him. Stop eating, stop eating, stop eating. After cheese, it says pickles. Pickles. Pickles, baby. But is this eat something? Oh, maybe that's okay. This is what I need.
No, we're not doing eating hour, girls. You have 2 more sandwiches to make. Come on.
Lucy, it's more arugula. Hey, Mama, come look at our sandwich. She was mostly eating my sandwich.
Lunch in hand, we were off on an adventure to work up a little appetite before tucking into our 3 baguette sandwiches. We walked to the Marina of Cannes for a short ferry ride to an island, Île Sainte-Marguerite. It's pedestrian only, and this crisp but sunny winter morning was the perfect occasion for a long walk to burn off some energy. We decided we'd scope out 3 different spots along the way to eat our sandwiches. Thank you so much for making us lunch.
So what can we expect from the sandwich? What's in it?
Do you remember what was on it?
There was a pickle and there was a ham. Like it?
You chew, savor, enjoy. A baguette's a hard thing to chew. A solid hamburger.
Can I try one?
I would rate that as exceptional. Magnifique.
Seriously?
Really get in there. It's delicious, isn't it?
You did a good job.
I think you did an excellent job. Lunch? Check. It was also my last day as a 29-year-old, and a lovely way to spend it indeed. Our next meal to tackle was a snack, which we always give our little girls when they wake up from their nap. Le Gouter is the term for the French snack time, which is often served to children just after school, or around 4 p.m. Supposedly, one common snack for French children is a baguette with butter and a piece of chocolate on the side, or a baguette with chocolate stuffed inside the bread, which we found interesting. One of our street interviewees did say that bread and butter with chocolate on the side was her favorite way to eat the baguette.
Je sais, avec du beurre, trempé dans le chocolat chaud.
Well, it's Valentine's Day in Nice, so we went to a chocolate shop to procure a chocolate bar for our snack.
Having a baguette for a snack with some chocolate? What could go wrong? That sounds delicious.
Girls, we ride. Let's go. We went to a chocolate shop but found it was too fancy for stuffing inside bread. So we went to a convenience store for a more affordable bar.
Oh, it says it has to be dark. I wanted the white one.
Ozzy, white chocolate's not really chocolate.
It's hard to go wrong with this. Look at that. Just look at that. Happy Valentine's Day, the French way.
Yes.
You can't go wrong.
You know what it really looks like is the French s'more minus marshmallows, I guess. It'd probably be better with a crunchier baguette. Still pretty good though. But a vessel for our chocolate. You girls are 2 lucky little Frenchies. Happy Valentine's Day, Ozzy.
Thank you. I tried play card.
The snacks that we typically have, are they usually chocolate and bread? Or are they something a little healthier?
They'll chocolate and bread.
In your dreams.
And finally, dinner. We wanted an excuse to try a French classic dish, duck confit with poulet lentils. Off we went to the canned farmer's market to grab our ingredients. We got a bunch of fresh produce, some beautiful herbs, and some duck confit. Later that day, we started chopping and getting the dish together. The poulet lentils are supposedly a staple dish of the countryside, made with a few simple vegetables, high-protein lentils, and a bushel of fresh thyme for that herbaceous French flavor. It's really just a veggie cookdown with some olive oil and stock, but you get to finish it with some fresh components like parsley and spinach. A duck confit, if you aren't familiar, is a duck leg that's been cooked at a low temperature in its own fat and then preserved in that fat, usually in a jar like this, but sometimes in a bag. To prepare it, you simply get it into a roasting pan and into the oven to crisp up. We couldn't resist also making a duck breast because France has the best duck breasts we've ever tasted. They're super affordable but taste like a very expensive steak. You may be thinking, where's the baguette? Well, we'd read that tearing off the baguette at the table and eating it on the side is one of the most classic ways to enjoy it. Cold, dusty, exceedingly average. The thing we can't really believe is that people say it's common to just leave it on the table. No bread plates. If you're French, let us know. The duck's good. The breast is awesome. I haven't tried the confit yet. We'd had 4 baguette meals and tried more than we could even count at this point, but now we wanted a real challenge. Could we, with no experience, pretty poor equipment, and supermarket ingredients, create a passable baguette? As you may have seen in part 2 of our baking series in Morocco, we are not skilled or practiced at baking bread, and most of our efforts generally fail, so this was a long shot. To give ourselves the best chance, we decided to try 3 different methods. It all began the night before the baking would occur. To prepare the doughs, our first handicap was pretty major. No measuring cups in this apartment, so we began by eyeballing our proportions. A tough start for a discipline built on measuring to the gram. Very similar recipes across the 3 methods. One was a no-knead, which had the simple ingredients of flour, yeast, water, and salt, and a little bit of olive oil. The other methods, being the stretch and fold and the kneaded techniques, had no olive oil, but a little bit of honey added to them. Soon the doughs were ready to rise overnight in the kitchen.
I'm trying to make bread. Almost gonna make bread and just roll them out, okay? And then we're gonna eat them, okay?
The first method was the kneaded dough. This was one of the 2 doughs with a little honey in it. The dough came out super sticky, but we started working it and adding in a little bit of extra flour. Once it seemed a bit less sticky, we shaped them into baguettes and set them on the tray to rise. Next, we worked the stretch and fold method. The night before, you're supposed to get the dough out flat and continue folding it over onto itself. For us, the girls sort of just kept stirring it, so our method here was a little bit sketchy. The next day, this was the simplest one because we just dumped the dough onto the table, formed it into a rectangle, then folded it into a smaller rectangle, and they were ready to go, supposedly. Finally, we had the no-knead method, which was seemingly a disaster. The dough was so wet, we just kept adding flour until it was workable. Then it was scraped up into a passable shape, and we were ready to bake. For all 3, we had a pan full of water in the base of the oven, as the steam is supposed to let the bread rise without the crust developing too quickly.
It feels better than it looks. It has some, you know? This was the flatter of the 2.
It definitely feels way better than it looks.
Do you like that?
Tastes like pizza dough.
I was gonna say, it kind of looks like it.
Yeah, really cheap pizza dough.
Flavor's not great either, to be honest with you. Just kind of bland. And yeah, we can do better. That's the most intensive one too. That was like the kneading and the fancy roll and all that stuff. You wrote it?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hoping they'll be better.
That's better.
Way better.
Still not right, but better.
This sauce has like no flavor.
They put like a lot of salt.
Oh, good.
We are actually shocked because this dough was just Frankenstein dough. It looked so bad. I literally just took the bag of flour, was dumping it in there. It was wet. It was like liquid. And These look like the best of the batch, so.
Easy.
Okay, try.
Ooh.
Did you hear that? That sounded good. That looks, there's some air bubbles in that. That's hilarious because that one, it was the most like the de tradition, just the 4 ingredients. That's right. And you literally let it sit. It was no knead, nothing. I'm gonna pull it off. Is that crunchy? No, absolutely not. Oh,
Whoa.
that's hilarious. Of course, the easiest one.
It's a little bit better.
Is it really?
The flavor still isn't there, but texturally much, much more spot on.
The best.
So we were just looking at one of the ones that we had gotten yesterday from a very good bakery, and then we were comparing it against this one, and honestly, it's not that far off. They actually look pretty similar, especially if you can, well, this one's stale now, so it doesn't have the same crunch, but yesterday it did, and if you look at the insides, I mean, the aeration is pretty similar. The thing is, the one from the bakery is much more flavorful. I don't know if that's due to salt or just a different type of flour, but structurally and texturally, pretty similar. And so this brings us to the end of our 3-part series on baking. During this project, we really wanted to explore cultures in which baking is a central part of daily life. With the nuns in Spain, we really enjoyed getting a small glimpse into the lives of otherwise solitary individuals who have very little interaction with the public. These baked goods, in a very real way, are the nuns' window to their communities. Whether through a turntable where they only hear someone's voice, or a face-to-face meeting. More so than providing them a small contribution to their livelihood, it's the sisters' opportunity to meet people. In France, we discovered how truly dear the baguette is to the French. It's a stereotype deeply rooted in the reality that most French people are buying a baguette most days of their lives. But our favorite of the 3 projects is the one that brought us to the country with the most genuine and welcoming people, Morocco. Here we were able to learn more about Morocco's communal ovens, which had piqued our interest greatly in 2020. The master bakers who work these ovens tend nearly 1,000 loaves of bread per day for people all over the Medina, from restaurants to hotels to mothers just trying to get dinner on the table. It was really fun to dive deeply into a topic like this, and it's something that you can expect to see more from us this year. Probably much less baking and a lot more cooking. But until then, thanks for watching. This spring, we visited India, Thailand, and Japan to create our next series, The Curry Kingdoms. Subscribe if you're excited to see this series and more globetrotting foodie adventures.